of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee. We are resuming our hearings, and this, of course, is into the, I want to get the wording correct, the proposal for the revocation and disposal of identified reserves for housing. We have gone through 2 days already, Monday and Tuesday. So this is our third, and we will be having another day on Monday as well. Thank you very much. So we're resuming our hearing now, and we have got a number of presenters that are either going to Zoom in or who will be here in person. Councillor Wang is watching from afar. Kia ora, Councillor Wang. And we are being live streamed, so we have people also who are watching. So to those who are watching from afar, no mai haramai, welcome to our hearings meeting this afternoon. Welcome to members of the public that are here, and of course to our hard-working staff. Jeff, your staff, no mai haramai, so welcome. And we resume our hearing, and our first submitter is Jennifer Cole, and I understand Alison Semester is going to speak on behalf of Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. Alison. Thank you, Alison. Before you come up, I notice that you're speaking on behalf of a few people, and there are others slotted in between yourself and the next one you're going to be speaking on behalf of, which is Angus Budge. Would you like to speak to those two, and then we'll have a break and I'll move into the other speakers for a little while? Thank you. Well, that would... Yes, thank you. Thank you. Well, if we could have you speaking on behalf of Jennifer Cole and Angus Budge, that would be good. And then, thank you. Thank you very much. And you have 5 minutes, Alison. Thank you. And if you could just switch the little button on and the microphone, and we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
As a Rotorua ratepayer, I wish to register my objection to and complete disagreement with the sale of some of or parts of Rotorua's reserves. Being a resident of Middleton Road in Hannahs Bay, I am utterly appalled that the council should even think about selling Lee Road Reserve. The reserves should be kept in perpetuity as open spaces for the benefit of all residents. Previous councils, looking at long-term plans and expecting the city to grow, realised the importance of open spaces. To use these special facilities for housing is completely against the ethos of what they were established for. There is evidence that many of the homeless are not originally Rotorua residents. I don't believe it should be the responsibility of Rotorua Lakes Council to rehouse these people. This is the responsibility of central government. With particular regard to the proposal to sell Lee Road Reserve, there is the perception that this has not been given serious consideration. I believe the plan is for in excess of 40 houses to be constructed here. This is a relatively small community, and such a large number of KO housing would be disproportionate. Have any of the councillors actually visited the Lee Road site and seen where it is located? On one boundary is an international holiday park, all seasons holiday park, full of families and children. On another boundary is Keswick Christian Camp, also full of children. Another issue that obviously hasn't been taken into consideration is flooding. The All Seasons Holiday Park already has issues with stormwater backing up. Another 40 homes next door will only add to the problem. All Rotorua Council is doing is moving a problem from the city centre to the suburbs, with the potential to blight communities with raised crime figures and devaluing properties. The proposal to sell the reserves must be dropped, and a sensible solution to rehouse the homeless, where their problems can be dealt with, and needs to be introduced by central government. Central government introduced the proposal to house the homeless in motels during COVID. This was a solution to the homeless problem for the government. The hotel owners were very pleased to accept the government's payment to keep them afloat when there were no tourists. Now the motel owners want a higher return from tourists and want the homeless out, but the government is doing nothing. There needs to be a proper resolution to this issue, not this quick, unthought-through reaction by our council. Jennifer Cole.
Oh, thank you, Alison. Perhaps we could just take your one next. That would be good. Thank you.
Right. Right, this is my submission. I'll be quick. I am speaking in opposition to the sale of the reserves. My submission has been available for you to read. It's also on the council website for others to read in volume 2, page 22. This is the third day of submissions, and this is the third day I have attended. You have heard from some very eloquent people. I have watched the proceedings carefully, and I have listened to the proceedings carefully. I find it astounding that 5 councillors with no mandate and no inclusion in the district plan can make a decision this close to an election that will have far-reaching consequences on many people's lives. I've decided not to read my submission today. I see nothing to be gained from reading it. I have just one more thing to say. We will have another opportunity to express our views on the council's intention to sell our reserves. We will have that opportunity to speak on October 8th at the ballot box, and that opportunity will be meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Did you have Angus's one there with you?
I do.
Thank you. I'm happy to take that, and then we can go to some of the other submitters.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of Angus Budge of Hannah's Bay, I oppose the proposal to sell all or part of the reserves identified for sale, particularly that identified at Lee Road, Hannah's Bay. Referring to the RLC document entitled Enhancing Our Reserves and Building More Homes, it is the responsibility of Council to articulate the purpose and function of the reserves. What is the evidence that it has no clear purpose or function? RLC's open space level of service policy states that all open spaces have a clear purpose and function, primary and secondary. How has RLC articulated and communicated that? Activities reflect needs of user groups and local communities. How has RLC worked on establishing this? Encourage sense of ownership over the space. How has RLC worked at this with respect to the reserves? A decision to change reserve status without having attended to identified RLC standards first is, in my view, the wrong way to proceed. Once a reserve is lost, it is nearly impossible to recover. With an increasing concern for environmental well-being, maintaining green spaces should be a priority. I am concerned that the process with respect to RLC's decision might be predetermined. Factors to indicate this are RLC's online submission form is a reflection of a predetermined process. Most questions are slanted towards a sale. For example, questions 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. There are no similar questions with respect to the reserves not being sold. The follow-up questions seemed premised on the reserves being sold. I am willing to be corrected, but I understand that the Mayor used 2 votes to change what would have been a position of a no-sale council position. Was the Mayor's decision predetermined? Why did the Mayor not vote to preserve the status quo? Why was a casting vote cast with an election very close?
There's been a point of order called.
Sorry?
There's been a point of order called. Yes, Your Worship.
The relevance.
The relevance. Yes, just carry on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why was a casting vote cast with an election very close to being held? What was the urgency? With such a significant and long-lasting impact on the community, should the Mayor have used a casting vote while permissible in this instance? Question mark. With respect to Kāinga Ora's plans for housing on Rotorua reserves. A Radio New Zealand article published on their website on 16 April this year indicates that RLC has acted without transparency with respect to this issue and that KO already had plans. Why was the meeting held in secret if community consultation is important? Mr Budge then goes on to make detailed remarks around conformity or lack thereof with the Local Government Act. These can be read in full in his submission on the Council website. Will the establishment of housing on Rotorua reserves see Rotorua become safer? Are there better alternatives? In the case of Lee Road, there is a distinct lack of amenities nearby, supermarkets, ATM machines, etc. There is a perception that RLC is failing in its stated goals. These are outstanding places to stay, vibrant city heart, a resilient community. A focus on improvement in these areas should be pursued first, thus giving ratepayers trust in RLC's processes and outcomes. Has Council complied with and demonstrated that it has complied with the Local Government Act Section 77, which reads, "A local authority must, in the course of the decision-making process, A, seek to identify all reasonably practicable options for the achievement of the objective of a decision, and B, assess the options in terms of their advantages and disadvantages." To read Mr Budge's submission in full, I've had to truncate it a bit. It can be found on the Council website on Volume 2, page 94. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just councillors, your worship councillors, I understand that from time to time you will want to raise standing orders, and usually that's around language or that's around misrepresentation or relevance. But I would ask that I certainly will use my discretion, because for many of the submitters, it's from their perspective it is relevant. So I'm just going to say I will be watching, don't worry, but yes, I want submitters to know that they can, within reason, bring up the issues that they feel are from their perspective. So just want to make sure that you're all aware of that I am going to use my discretion a wee bit. We did see on Tuesday, a number of incidents, and I don't want a repeat of those. So thank you.
Madam Chair,
yes.
Can I just make sure then that that just for all of us, because we have to be safe in these hearings as well, because we're unable to question. So it's just important also for our submitters to be aware of perhaps the tones, and that comes through you as our chair.
Yes, and I am aware that, and certainly a couple of days ago, the language was, I found disrespectful. There's no need for that, but I do understand that this is a topic where people feel passionate about. They want to be heard from their perspective. So I am going to say, and I will say that I will be monitoring how things are presented, and I will certainly be looking at the language that is used, but I want it to be an environment where submitters feel that they can, I was going to say get things off their chest, but I'm not really saying that, but that they can put it in the words that they feel most comfortable with, as long as it's in a respectful manner. Thank you. Yes, Your Worship.
I don't wish to litigate, and I think when we sum up the submissions and response, I'd like to see a response about process and the background process.
Right, thank you. Yes, I think that for a number of us there's been points that we've been making because of the points that submitters have brought up, and they've brought it up in their submission so that we are aware of their feelings in a number of areas. So like most of you, I've been making my own notes as well. So thank you. Our next submitter is Andy Marshall, please. Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Councillor Rakawa-Tate. You run a great meeting. I've read or heard many submissions in the past month. It was impossible not to be touched by much of what people had prepared and sent into council for consideration, and I'm adding my voice to the opposition that they've raised. The reserves I'm most familiar with are those off Coulter Road in Ofota and Lee Road in Hannahs Bay. In the case of Coulter Road, moving submissions have been made by John Kinnenmonth, Chanel and Joe Brightwell, as well as many others who have properties bordering the reserve. This reserve is surrounded by existing houses, and it beggars belief that you are considering placing new houses on what appears to be a small urban oasis. Who in council has been out to Ofota, looked at this reserve and concluded it would be better off with houses on it? The reserve on Lee Road became familiar to me when, as a youngster at Rotorua School and later at Boys High. After that, I tended to take it for granted. But you do take things for granted when secure in the knowledge that they will always be there. Sadly, that security of knowledge is no longer the case, and my fellow residents have provided trenchant argument for a reconsideration by council. Fran, Tracy, Adrian, John and many others who have written and spoken with passion don't consider they own Lee Road Reserve. They reflect a sense that the reserve is simply ours, in inverted commas, belonging to all the people of Rotorua, and any respectful and lawful use of it is welcome. We know visitors to All Seasons Holiday Park enjoy our reserve. It is an attractive addition to All Seasons amenities. In June, I contacted the Rotorua Police, an organisation I have enormous respect and sympathy for. The District Commander received an email from me drawing attention to the plan for dispersing social housing throughout the city and asking whether police had been involved with discussions with council over the plans. I asked this knowing that police response times can be long, and Hannahs Bay, being on the outskirts of the city, particularly long. It seemed to me that dispersing the Fenton Street issues must further stretch police resources. The Area Commander's PA acknowledged my email, but any further response has not been forthcoming, and my sense is that our Area Commander is unable to provide a positive reply. Can council tell us that the plan to spread social housing has been canvassed with the police and they have assured council any behavioural problems can be quickly handled? One of the biggest concerns in Hannahs Bay is the proposed addition of 43 houses to the existing 80 nearer the lake. A concentration that would be akin to raising the total proportion of social housing in Rotorua to 35%. Council surely would not dream of this, with the national average being somewhere in the order of 5%. Why is council proposing such an inordinate concentration for Hannahs Bay nearer the lake? I'll reiterate those percentages. 35% at Hannahs Bay, a national average of 5%. Why such an inordinate concentration for Hannahs Bay? In the light of the many issues raised in the submissions, some highly detailed, we look to you for a halt in the revocation process and a detailed reconsideration of the plan to sell reserve land to Kaingaora. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, yes, she is. Thank you. Anne Hunter, please. I think we've been here before, Anne. Thank you. Oh, you're getting to be a gun. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Your Worship. fellow councillors and executive, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anne Hunter. I do not support the proposal to sell all or part of our reserve sites identified for sale. I live at 81 Remervale Street on the boundary identified as 16 Kamahi Place, Linton Park West. We purchased our section in February 2000 and at that time visited the council to see if any plans were proposed to build on the area behind us. We were told that this is green space and would never be built on. How things can or may change. I have listened to the online streaming of the hearings so far and have been amazed at the emotions running for those living on the boundary or near all these reserves. And while I wasn't going to let that affect me, it sure has, as this is our little piece of paradise. We moved into our new home then in July 2000, and what attracted us to the area was the green space directly behind us and the lovely views to Mount Nongataha. This could be severely compromised if any building development happened behind us, and this is the fear of the unknown. What sort of buildings would go behind us, with the introduction of being able to build multi-storey living? To my knowledge also, this part of the reserve has had no issue with graffiti, illegal dumping or rubbish in the 22 years that we have resided there. The issues of those have been mentioned in the council reports have been directly associated around the Linton Community Centre and the area directly behind the Edmund Road shops and service station, not this part of Linton Park. The reserve is very safe, there is no road frontage and a great area for kids to throw a ball around, fly kites, enjoy the green space without the fear of traffic and noise, something we and our grandchildren love. It's a great link between the other streets by walkways, which we use 3 to 4 times a week. Every day we see people walking their dogs and exercising around that little rectangular block. People even drive to use this area. And just a few weeks back, Lake City Athletic Club used part of this for their cross-country champs. In this day, we should be protecting our green space to encourage play outdoors, close to our doorsteps, improving our health and well-being. The environmental impact to the area will be huge. Traffic flow along Little Kamahi Place will be substantially increased for this small area, as most households have at least one vehicle. Carving up that reserve to put roading down the side or in the middle would be insane and affect every single household that borders that reserve. I'm not sure how many houses would be allocated for this area, but the views, sunlight and noise created by such, especially if multi-storey living, would have a profound effect on the current residents surrounding that block. Perhaps we should be developing the area with another playground, as it is relatively flat. Some additional native planting would look good also. While I acknowledge the need for more housing in Rotorua is needed, please do not sell off our green space. Leave this for all our future generations to enjoy. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Patrick Hunter. Thank you. Good afternoon, Patrick.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
I tēnei ahi. Madam Chair, Your Worship, elected councillors, my name is Patrick Hunter and I live at 81 Remervale Street, Rotorua. I oppose the sale of all reserves in Rotorua that are proposed to be sold by the Rotorua Lakes Council, and the one that concerns us directly is 16 Kamahi Place, Linton Park West. Thank you for allowing to speak to support of my submission. The 4 principles of the Rotorua Council follow are guided by economic and well-being. We were told when buying our section up here, this reserve was designated a green belt and would never be built on. We received Rotorua Council, we were advised by Rotorua Council, we're going to develop the area for recreational activities. Our house has been designed and built and sits on the boundary of Linton Park West, facing north, with views of Mount Nongataha. Should buildings at the back of us proceed, we would be compromised severely. Environmental well-being of community and safety. Use Linton Park West for recreational activities, i.e. walking, playing with our grandchildren, walking our daughter's dog. The reserve is so well used by people walking their dogs, people swinging golf clubs, kids playing cricket and footy in the summer. There are 4 access areas from the roadsides to Linton Park West, i.e. 2 from Reamavale Street, 1 from Heafy Place and Kamahi Place. There has never been an instance of vandalism and antisocial behaviour or graffiti at this part of the reserve. Social well-being. Linton Park West is a very safe area. You have no cars or road to worry about. It is a reasonably flat, safe environment. Council need to develop more so it becomes user-friendly, i.e. for playing touch rugby, boot camps, physical exercise outdoors. And I know the council actually do promote physical exercise to the community. Our green spaces need to be kept for all of the community to use of our social well-being and health. With the predicted population to increase about 10,000 in the next 30 years, the need for green spaces is paramount. Cultural well-being, mindfulness of residents in the community area. If site was sold, we do not want any buildings on this reserve at all. We want it to continue as a reserve as designated, putting in gardens and native trees, creating a flatter playing surface area. We've waited a long time for this to be developed and it has never happened, so we were quite shocked when this land was proposed to be put up for sale. Children adventure programs should be established. A running and walking track should be made all around the boundary of reserve to serve the community for health and well-being, and encouraging people to exercise and promoted by the council for that purpose. Residents want to keep our open spaces now for generations to come and follow in our footsteps for all to enjoy and grow. It would be great if the reserve has less humps and bumps with a surface a lot easier to use. And those who live now need to make better decisions that will allow the people who follow to enjoy the same, if not better, living in that space. Do not revoke reserve status on our reserves. Green belts must be retained. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora. Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Thank you. Thank you. Just doing Alison, would you care to come back, because I understand you're speaking on behalf of Karen Lancaster and also on behalf of Dave Parnell. Thank you. And then we'll thread the other ones in as we go along. Thank you very much. Councillors, that's now Alison Semester is going to be speaking to Karen Lancaster's submission, which is number 8 on your schedule, and also then to Dave Parnell's submission, which is number 12. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alison.
To Rotorua Council. I am writing to oppose the Council's plan to sell a number of local reserves within Rotorua. I live in Holden's Bay and understand the Lee Reserve in Hannah's Bay is one of the proposed reserves for sale. I am also of the understanding that Kāinga Ora are the intended purchasers of this particular reserve. I completely understand and sympathise there is a shortage of suitable housing for New Zealanders who find themselves in unfortunate circumstances. This is a nationwide issue and one that needs urgent action. No New Zealander should be sleeping on the streets if they don't want to. However, it is a situation that needs more than simple housing. These people need support, education, jobs, and a way forward, preventing the vicious cycle happening to future generations. By selling the Lee Reserve to Kāinga Ora, the occupants of these properties will find themselves stuck out on the outskirts of town. How is this helping them, apart from a roof over their heads? It is also factual to state that there is a certain number of gang members within these homeless communities. We have enough problems with crime in our area already without adding more into the mix. I witnessed a crime a few weeks ago and reported it to the police. It took the police 40 minutes to get here. In my opinion, Rotorua is the North Island's top tourist destination. You cannot move nature and sheer power it exhibits to the you cannot be moved by the nature and sheer power it exhibits to those who visit. This is such a special sacred place with deeply rooted Maori heritage. With COVID behind us and our borders opening up, surely Rotorua should be one of New Zealand's showcase cities. Rotorua needs to attract the tourists back, and the tourists need to witness the power of nature, learn and feel the Maori culture, and experience this beautiful city. Rotorua has become a beacon to the homeless from other towns and cities around New Zealand. It's time to return the motels to the tourists and build suitable housing and support in more appropriate environments. Come on, Council, let's make Rotorua a showcase city. Let's keep our reserves and beautify this city. Preserve the sacred Maori heritage and let's build suitable housing in an area with good amenities and support. Karen Lancaster, Holden's Bay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, carry on with
Yes,
Mr. Parnell.
Thank you.
Reading on behalf of David Parnell, Hannah's Bay. One of the characteristics of New Zealand's towns and cities is the number of green open spaces, and this is one of the many positive features remarked on by tourists. Even if those reserves in the proposal are not currently being fully utilised, and that is questionable, the motivation as outlined in the council letter which went out to affected properties appears to be driven from a housing need perspective only. There is no doubt that utilisation of the open spaces will increase across Rotorua as the city develops, and loss of any area will be detrimental to the future generations. We have been asked regularly as we travelled throughout New Zealand and mentioned we had a holiday home in Rotorua. How bad is it with the crime and the antisocial behaviour? This is the perception now, and while it is related to so-called emergency and temporary housing, this perception is able to be changed over time when the motels largely return to normal. However, if the Council proceeds with the reserve proposals to move concentrated groups of these people into the suburbs, this will be permanent and irreversible. Rotorua may not be able to recover its place as a desirable and safe holiday destination for families. This is not a case of what might happen and therefore debatable as to consequences. We know what will happen as it is occurring now. There are approximately 80 houses in the Hannah's Bay lakefront area which has been developing over time into a unique micro-suburb. The proposal to sell the Lee Road Reserve and introduce 43 social houses is far too large a percentage of the existing number to maintain any semblance of the community culture that exists. The reserve is right next to All Seasons Holiday Park and Keswick Christian Camp, the latter used by many education facilities from all across the country. It is not appropriate for these to be adjacent to a block of intensive social housing. Rotorua is the jewel in the crown of the North Island of New Zealand for tourism, with many people coming here to enjoy the Rotorua experience, which includes lakes, reserves, green spaces amongst its attractions. How the Council feels it is advantageous to place a social housing development in the heart of such an area escapes me. Rotorua is not constrained for land for development like other cities, and there has to be far more sensible options to pursue in solving short-term housing crisis without destroying the future of any area as Hannah's and Holden's Bay. For each reserve and area that is considered for intensive development, careful consideration of the community and the uniqueness of that area must be at the forefront of Council's consideration. This is Council's responsibility on behalf of all their ratepayers and residents. Their proposal appears to be only trying to address the housing issue, a large part of which has been government policy driven. While there is undoubtedly a need for additional social housing in Rotorua, this should be for Rotorua residents and not for the many families directed to Rotorua motels by MSD and KO solely because the motels were available during COVID. We are all familiar with the issues this has created in mostly one locality where there has been increased criminal activity. To set up large areas of KO housing in sites like reserves will potentially destroy Rotorua as a desirable tourist destination. The Fenton Street issue is well known throughout the country, and with exposure on national TV showing the short-sighted approach in removing reserves, Rotorua is at risk of turning off domestic tourists. In summary, with 4 generations of my family having enjoyed the city, I am very concerned that a potentially disastrous, short-sighted decision will have on the future of Rotorua. I strongly recommend that the Council reject the proposal outright and look for other alternatives to the short-term housing issue for residents of the area. Failing this, I request that no further actions are undertaken by Council in this term and the public debate and submissions remain open until the elections, when a new body can review options. Mr Parnell makes a number of other points in his lengthy submission that I can't condense into the time available. However, his written submission should be read for the reconsideration of utilising the Lee Road Reserve, which we hope the Council will undertake. His submission can be read in full on the Council website, page 240, volume 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The next submission is by Kerry Wicks, and he's unable to attend, but he's asked, I think, is it Don Patterson, Don, to speak on his behalf. Oh, yes. Well, it is number. We don't have it on the schedule. But we can. Thank you. Page 52. Sorry, I'll just check on that. Wicks, Kerry Wicks, 52. Page 52. Thank you. If it's not, we can get it up for you. Thank you. Thank you, Don. Thank you very much.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kerry herself couldn't be here today, and she felt it was important you heard a perspective from an outsider's point of view. So Kerry initially asked the managers from All Seasons Holiday Park to do this on her behalf, but due to their workload, which is caused by staff shortages, they were unable to do so, so they reached out and I said I would do that on her behalf. So Kerry writes, Kia ora, my name is Kerry Wicks. I'm from the Thames area and have been a regular guest at All Seasons Holiday Park in Lee Road, Rotorua for many years now. I first visited All Seasons Holiday Park as a child and have fond memories of my childhood camping holidays there. I am now the mother of 3 very active boys, and we continue to frequent All Seasons Holiday Park to give them the same wonderful experiences that I enjoyed as a kid. Over time, particularly the last 10 years or so, the holiday park has clearly had serious investment in its grounds and facilities, and it just keeps getting better and better. The downside to that is the park is getting more and more popular. Having 3 boisterous boys, they need space to run around and do what boys do best, run amok. However, with the holiday park getting busier, the same space on the park grounds for my family to play is reduced. That's where we're truly blessed to have the reserve right next door. It's a godsend for us. We're able to head to the reserve and play cricket, tiggy, rounders, whatever takes our fancy, as the space is there to do so. Other families staying at the holiday park do the same thing, and we have often sparked up great conversations and, in some cases, lifelong friendships with other like-minded family holiday makers. With the reserve gone, so go those opportunities. We're not a wealthy family, so All Seasons Holiday Park suits us perfectly, as we can keep our children amused with the on-site facilities as well as the reserve space right next door to create wonderful memories with our children without breaking the budget. If this proposal comes to fruition, then our days of staying at this holiday park are over. I have driven down Fenton Street during visits to Rotorua to see for myself what's actually happening. I've seen police cars parked up outside motels, burnt out buildings from fires, temporary fencing and bright orange cones, along with security guards outside the facilities that are clearly being used for emergency housing. But what is most concerning for me is the people that clearly occupy these premises, who are standing around in full view inside fences and outside these properties in groups, smoking, vaping, drinking. It is not a good look. I do ask myself, why aren't these people at work? I know the holiday park managers are screaming for staff. I've seen Tracy, the co-manager there, scrubbing the ablution block. I ask her what she's doing that for. She says, well, we keep on advertising and no one replies. So here I am. If this proposal goes ahead and the people that are to go into these houses are the same people I see in Fenton Street, I will simply not feel safe for me nor my family. I'm pretty sure I will be not alone in that. I understand the proposal is for 43 houses. I look at that reserve and think, how on earth are they going to all fit? I would have thought jamming that many houses into such a small space would not be a very good idea. I will stop holidaying at All Seasons Holiday Park, as I will be in constant fear for my family. That isn't a holiday. Holidays are for relaxing, which is what I won't be able to do as I cast an eye through the fence. I plead with you, please do not proceed with this. Rotorua is a tourist town, but tourists like me, my husband and 3 boys will just have to stop coming. Thank you for listening. Kerry, Josh, Max, Sam, Zach Wicks, Thames.
Thank you very much, Don. Damien Skellams. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Skellams. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you. And if you just press the little button there should be the green light should be on for your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on my submission opposing the Rotorua Lakes Council proposal to sell off 10 reserves in the area for housing. When we moved from Pocono to Rotorua and purchased our home in Heafy Place, we were advised by the real estate agent that the reserve behind our property was, in inverted commas, permanent green space. This was one of the reasons why we purchased where we did. We knew, in inverted commas, that we would have a safe place for our children to play, to kick a ball, to throw a frisbee, to run around and be children. I work from home sometimes, so therefore having a place near where we live, where they can run and go off and run off some steam safely is very useful. Selling off reserves for more housing is wrong. Reserves, green space are good for people's mental, physical and emotional health. It allows people to get close to nature, to breathe fresh air, to unwind, to exercise. Our health system, especially our mental health system, is under considerable pressure due to underfunding and more people using them. Removing the reserves will just make a bad situation worse. Putting houses on reserves is wrong due to the lack of infrastructure for drainage, etc., so therefore increases the risk of flooding. Grass and trees drain water, whilst concrete buildings and tar seal don't, and also the additional runoff for the properties around the reserves. Rotorua's reputation is already being damaged due to the amount of motels being used for emergency housing. So why does the council want to damage it even further by having many areas of transitional or social housing? This makes no sense at all. Selling off reserves is not new. Other councils around the world are doing the same thing. Doesn't mean that it's right. Reserves and trees provide places for native plants to thrive, which in turn allows wildlife to thrive and be safe. We already have issues regarding loss of habitat and wildlife becoming endangered or worse, extinct. The reserve behind our property has bushland, and once this is gone, it is gone. It can't be replaced. Our children need a future where green spaces exist and are enjoyed and deemed necessary. They are necessary. Green spaces are essential for many different ways I've mentioned. The old Rotorua Top 10 holiday park in Pukewatua Street is permanently closed. It has been for several months. This could be used as there is already existing infrastructure in place with the ablution block, kitchen, laundry areas, cabins, etc. that could be modernised. It is close to town. There is parking available. It is on or close to a bus route. It is just decaying and in time would become an eyesore. Making use of what is there and modernising it as required makes a lot of sense. This is a custom-made area ready and waiting for development. If the reserves are sold or taken, whatever is the appropriate term, they can't be replaced. i.e., once they're gone for good. Please keep our reserves what they are already used for being used for recreation, for walking, for having fun, for keeping healthy and keeping plants and wildlife safe. They are not for building houses. There are other areas that the council already owns or have access to that can be used for this. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Skellams. Judith Skellams. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me this time to come forward and speak to you all about my opposition to the council selling off reserves in Rotorua, Tau, Kaianga Ora and or to retirement villages. Sorry if you've heard it all before, but obviously there are a lot of us on the same page and in the same frame of mind regards to selling the reserves. We brought in the area because of the selling point of having a beautiful big reserve at our doorstep. Not only for us and our children to enjoy, but for others to enjoy also. Where else can they go and kick a ball, throw a frisbee, or fly a kite without it getting tangled in bushes or on clotheslines, or lost in neighbouring properties because the ball or frisbee has gone over the fence. Our children are frequently up on the reserve playing, as it is safer playing there than out on the roads on their bikes. We moved here from Pokeno with the purpose of having the lovely green spaces on our doorstep that we could enjoy. In the last 4 years, we've had nothing but construction happening around us, with houses popping up constantly. In the few months that we've been here in Rotorua, we have loved the peacefulness of no noise of construction or traffic, and we would like it to remain that way. Building on the reserves is not only taking away green spaces for an entire community to use for recreation, it is also adding to flooding issues for residents already backing onto these areas due to no infrastructure for drainage. Green spaces have their benefits, such as enhancing and promoting greater health and well-being, with people recovering faster if they have the view of green areas, such as trees and bushland. Removing green spaces, you are also removing the plants that are beneficial for the conversion of carbon dioxide to oxygen, which we all need in order to survive. Building up on our reserves is only going to promote a green society, as future generations are going to have nowhere to go and have outdoor physical fun and activity. As we know, too much screen time is only going to produce antisocial behaviour due to the lack of communication and interaction with others. The reserves in which we back onto is very popular for dog walkers, and saying that they are not utilised is false, as the reserve became very popular during the latest lockdown, in fact all lockdowns, not only for dog walking, but also for families getting out to kick a ball, for single people, and for the elderly to get out for their own health and sanity. The reserve is still very popular. In fact, during this wet weather that we have been experiencing, it has been used every day for dog walking and recreation. By taking away our reserves, you are negatively contributing to the mental, physical and emotional well-being of our community. By taking away the green space that gives us the freedom to move and not be in physical space of others in this time of COVID, our backyards are small enough now without you, the council, taking what is left of our green space. The council already have areas in which they can use to build on, so stop hiding this information from the ratepayers, such as land on Taitoki Place. Why can you not use the now abandoned top 10 camping ground on Pukewatua Street to build these houses on? There are already cabins, kitchens, utility and ablution blocks, so why not make use of them? The tent and caravan sites could be used for houses, and the cabins that are there could surely be upgraded to a standard to house families on a longer term. Why do we need to build up an already populated area? Can these builds not be moved to the outer areas where there is more land? Thank you for taking the time to listen to what I've had to say.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for bringing your children with you. Kia ora.
I had to because of school.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors, committee members. We are going to do a bit of juggling. So our next submitter is Dennis Brown, and I think Alison is speaking to Dennis's one as well. Thank you, Alison.
Last one. This is on behalf of Dennis Brown, who can't be here today. Rotorua City has been blessed by the foresight of earlier councils and councillors by allocating space for the harmonious growth and health of its citizens by land designated for recreational purposes. What responsible council would vote to turn those irreplaceable lands into housing? The City of Rotorua has an international appeal and has been able to accommodate the thousands of tourists who visit during the summer months and beyond. The country's government took the dramatic step to allocate motel rooms to the North Island's homeless people. In a time of international crisis, this was a bold move and no doubt helped to secure the sustainability of the hotel and motel industry until tourists return post-COVID and reduce the homelessness. The end of the pandemic is in sight, and it's understandable that hoteliers want their rooms back. It is not the responsibility of the Rotorua City Council to provide homes for those temporary residents. Crime in the city has got out of control, and many serious crimes are not being reported so as not to damage our reputation. What does this do for the future reputation of the city when it will soon circulate that Rotorua is not a safe place to visit? What future for the motels and other accommodation facilities then? It is surely the responsibility of the council and its administrators to enhance the city's appeal for both its existing inhabitants and future ones. Instead of looking to downgrade our city, why are we not allocating some of the reserves for future sports facilities, etc.? Cycling is growing in popularity in New Zealand and the rest of the world. Perhaps Rotorua could take a look at what facilities are being provided in France and incorporate some of their thinking. Tourists are being turned off our beautiful country through increasing bureaucratic measures to limit where we can go and how we are accommodated. Yes, we all know the results of unchecked freedom camping, but with affordable facilities, Rotorua business and citizens would benefit massively from this green tourism of cycling. So listen to the ratepayers of Rotorua and use the administration you have for the betterment of the city, not its demise. The issue of providing homes for the homeless. Why are they homeless, and is it the responsibility of the council to accommodate them from all over the North Island? In post-World War II days, the New Zealand government provided transit camps to house the thousands of newly arriving immigrants until they were able to integrate into the community. Surely this would be a far better move by central government to secure unused land in the far north of the country and build such a facility. Let's stop the sale of all reserves lands and work through the issues with full ratepayer and residents' input. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my grave concerns. Dennis Brown, Hannah's Bay.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Alison, for speaking on behalf of those submitters who weren't able to get here. Thank you. We have Jan and Neville Robinson, but I think Andrew is going to be speaking on their behalf. Thank you. That's submission 19 and the thank you.
Yeah, this is on behalf of Janet Randall and Neville Robinson of Hannah's Bay. I think it was prepared before the adjustment to submission timing, but I'll read it in full. As permanent residents of Hannah's Bay, we wish to record that we do not support and are strongly opposed to the council proposal to sell specific council reserve sites. Reserves are just that, pieces of land to be reserved for future generations to use and enjoy. Once these are sold off, for any reason the council chooses, they are lost forever to the communities they serve. There has been no public consultation on this proposal until it was leaked into the community by people who object to this project being pushed through in the manner you have attempted to. We, as ratepayers, are entitled to full and frank disclosure of council intentions and a chance to present our thoughts and views to council prior to any decision being finalised. This is a legal requirement under the Local Government Act 2002. The amount of time proposed for the community to present their views is too short, and once again reflects the Council's wish to rush this proposal through without sufficient consultation. At a meeting held on Tuesday 7 June for the local Hannahs and Holdens Bay concerned residents, a large number of households had not received the letter from Council dated 27th of May, meaning that their chance to respond had been reduced by 11 days. Of course, we know that there was an extension to that. If there is such urgency in supplying houses to residents of Rotorua, why not use land that is available now? The proposal to add 43 houses to the Lee Road Reserve for Kaingaora housing is unacceptable. In your own words, you need a range of housing solutions, including public housing, affordable rentals, first homes and smaller homes. The Council should identify land in areas of Rotorua that will not include the stated reserves and encourage participation by independent contractors who can build a range of houses consistent in a short time frame, as stated above. Building 43 houses in Lee Road, aside from the issue of losing our reserve, will add huge pressure on already struggling infrastructure. As residents of Willow Avenue, we've experienced heavy flooding of our property through insufficient drainage, and this will only exacerbate the problem. Moving people from one crowded, unsuitable site, such as the hotels in Fenton Street, to another will not solve the problems caused by Council in the first place. People who were not previously Rotorua residents being placed in emergency housing in Rotorua. Insufficient new builds being consented in Rotorua over the past 5 years at least. Placing Kaingaora housing in Lee Road will result in a potential increase of crime in the neighbourhood when we have no permanent police presence between here and the city police station, having lost our Orfata station a number of years ago. An increase in crime rates was demonstrated and reported by concerned local citizens around the emergency housing on Fenton Street. Any concentration of low-cost housing in the Hannahs Holdens Bay area will also result in reduced values to the existing residents who should, at the very least, expect to be consulted in a timely manner. As an observer at the Council meeting where the vote for this proposal was taken, we noted that it was certainly not a unanimous decision and was, in fact, only passed by a casting vote by the Mayor. As a number of currently standing councillors are not standing next election, why is there such a rush to push this proposal through? Surely this should be scheduled as a proposal for a newly elected council to consider and consult on publicly in an open and honest manner, not pushed through by the Mayor when clearly many of her council were not in favour. Janet Randall and Neville Robinson, permanent residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, councillors, we'll take a tea break until 3:30. Thank you. please. Thank you. Kia ora, Rosalind. Welcome. And thank you, Rosalind. Take a seat. And if you just press the little button there on the microphone, when it shows green, you're all set to go. And Robin, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm usually known
Rosalind, sorry.
I'm usually known as Ros, but we've got Rosalind for officialdom. I am speaking about reserves and the revocation of reserves because for a long time I was lucky enough to live beside one. And it was at Karaha Point, and kids played from all over the show, and they walked there or they cycled there. So it was a nice low carbon footprint. They also had fresh air and places to play. Now, I don't think it matters what your demographic is. You have an entitlement to space. I returned from Hong Kong a few years ago to look outside my hotel window and see everywhere you could see 50-storey buildings in the middle of a tiny wee reserve that the British colonial people had set aside. What is in there? Yum cha, Tai Chi first thing in the morning, 24-hour use. And that's what I want to see us keep in Rotorua. So getting back to my notes, my main concern is the quality of life for families when their reserves are taken and filled up with housing. The advantage of reserves is that people walk right in their neighbourhood without adding to our carbon footprint. I was fortunate to be able to live beside one. I've told you some of the things people did. The reserve was also used for neighbours to get together. That's just one reserve I know about, but through prudent previous town planning, there are many with the same benefits in many Rotorua suburbs. And once they've gone, we can't get them back. I seem to recall that when land was being subdivided, it wasn't everybody who just wanted to give a reserve. They had to give a reserve. So if you made a subdivision, a requirement was in planning, some of the land had to be gifted. Sometimes it was the worst possible bit. The developer didn't want that piece. However, it still has the benefit of space, and I believe that the wise decisions of earlier councils have retained that land. And I know you have a problem with budgeting, and I'm sympathetic to it. And I know as a householder, we can only do what we can afford. But I'd strongly recommend that the council think about prioritising reserves, even if we have to increase rates above some other things that may be able to be stalled. My feeling is once they've gone, you're not going to get them back. And I feel grateful that the previous councils had the wisdom to set them aside for recreation for future generations. And my time on here mightn't be much longer, but my kids and my grandkids and all the people in the Ford block and everywhere I know and love need somewhere to play. So I'm strongly opposed to any reserves being taken or sold to pay bills that have resulted from maybe poor budgeting or inflation or something you can't help. But I prefer to see that we keep them, whatever the cost. So I believe retaining reserves should be a priority. And I end with 3 I's. One is inflation. When we bought at Kawaha Point on the top of the hill by Vista Place in 1972, our house, a 4-bedroom house next to the reserve, a nice rambling house, was, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, $17,200. So that property is worth a lot more. So therefore the reserve, which is about 3 times the size of that, is worth more as well. And that's just one neighbourhood I'm talking about. I also believe that intensification is going to be a government requirement, so we're going to have to spread out and up. And you might think the Hong Kong scenario sounds really far-fetched. Somebody said, oh, we'll never build like that in Rotorua. But I don't have a crystal ball, and neither do you. So I would like to see those spaces kept. And I think the last thing I'd like to say is I regret in my 3 I's that it has been a bit of an invisible process. And while people might have been well aware of it for a long time, I have friends who've rung up only recently to be told nothing is happening. So that's my thoughts for it. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Rosalind, or Ros. Thank you for your presentation today.
That's right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Edith Williams, please. Submission 71, councillors. Thank you.
It's still going, is it? It is, yes.
May I start?
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, my name's Irene Williams and I live at 27A Robinson Ave, Holden's Bay. I am really opposed to the sale of reserve land in Rotorua. This land has been set aside for all residents and visitors alike. Like the other lady, I say once they've gone forever. Some of the reserves are not suitable for any housing. The drainage problem, particular to Rotorua, because we've chosen to settle around a lake with hills around us, as evidenced by the extraordinary amount of money required to make the proposed area around Springfield Golf Course suitable for housing. A reason given for sale of these reserves is lack of use. I've used reserves around Rotorua my whole life with my children. I no longer have to worry, but my grandchildren do use the Lee Road Reserve when they can get to it. But until recently, it was covered in all manner of rubbish with a sign saying keep out. The International Climate Change advisors are adamant that green spaces and reserves in our towns and cities are to be retained. This is spoken of as a basic and one of the first requirements in the fight to control climate change, now and in the future. As more houses are built on smaller and smaller sections, some as medium density housing, as Minister for Housing, Megan Woods call them, these will become the norm, and these become the norm. Large trees, fruit trees, even vegetable plots will be difficult, if not impossible, so our green spaces may well be the only place to have fruit trees growing. Social housing has always been important to our communities and always will be.
Excuse me, could you just use the other microphone and draw it closer to you? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Social housing has always been important to our communities and always will be. Anyone can become homeless through a set of circumstances quite often beyond our control. This makes homeless people extremely vulnerable. It has been proven throughout the world over many years the siting of social housing is just so very important. Children need spaces to play. Again, as proven over many years throughout the world, and children learn through play. To dump vulnerable people in an area like Lee Road is just senseless. The nearest school is an hour walk by my walking, one way with footpath across a very busy Tenai Road. Medical centres and shopping over half an hour each way. Bus service is being reduced, so a reliable car and an income to support rising petrol costs are going to be a necessity. But when people are already stretched and stressed financially, this is reprehensible. As Rotorua grows, the air traffic will grow. The nearest you are to an airport, the louder the noise, and the afterburners especially are. Lee Road Reserve is about as close as you can get to an airport. Most of us who live here are aware of the dynamics and have chosen to be residents. People needing social housing have no choice. Right next door to Lee Road is a very popular holiday park, well used by domestic and international visitors. The owners or managers of this facility must be tearing their hair out. As an ex-campground owner, I know firsthand the pitfalls of children, unsupervised children, using the facilities without the knowledge and or the permission of the owners. ACC makes you responsible. And until proven otherwise, emotional trauma, time and financial burden is immense if one of these children happens to get hurt. 40 houses are proposed to be built on Lee Road Reserve. The irresistible temptation for children in such density of housing cannot be dismissed as the camp owner's responsibility. Safety in our community is another issue. Among the genuine homeless are the lawless. This has been amply demonstrated by the appalling situation that has been allowed to develop in Fenton Street. Along with the right to be housed is the responsibility to be considerate to your neighbour, to take care of your home and to respect other people's property. So until Kaingaroa can show their ability and willingness to hold the lawless to account, I'm not a little confident about my safety. Tourism, a huge part of the economy in Rotorua. Once potential visitors to our area become concerned about the safety or lack of, the industry will suffer. This will happen, people will talk, our world has got smaller. The Council states in its 2022-23 delivery plan, and I quote, focused on 5 key priority areas, unquote. Housing, thriving communities, infrastructure, community safety economic development, and finally, climate change control. This council is failing miserably in 4 out of 5 with this proposal. It's a quick fix done by vulnerable people. Then washing hands of this is no longer your problem, but it will be. And it will be a price paid by many generations of Rotorua residents.
Thank you very much. Can I ask that that microphone be checked, please? Thank you. Is Mariana Virgo here, please? Thank you, Mariana. Thank you. Thank you, Mariana. If you take a seat there, we'll get those. Thank you. If you just press the green button, the button that the microphone should go on. Thank you. And you have 5 minutes. Thank you. Kia ora and welcome.
Tomo ki e te iwi te whare pare mata ki runga o pōne ke te whare o te tūpuna o kui. Niriri peti moko puna ra e hawiki tōria nana i homai. Te tiriti o waitangi me te mana motu hake mo te iwi mau. Ri e kope hua ana e ngā kāwanatanga e tautoko nana e ngā me mamau. Ri o te tō ni ana o Newti e ni kāri o te whenua ka ngaro taku mana ki te pō uri ki te pō tango. Hei aru ai poku mi te arai ona e tu whera mai rai pōne ke koko ia e hara e. Tēnei au e noho whakeiti nei tēnei wā ki te kōrero ki taku tāpaetanga. Kaore au e tautoko ana i tēnei kaupapa kia hokona atu ngā whenua tāpui. He aha ai, he mana tō te whenua o tēnā whenua tāpui, o tēnā whenua tāpui. Nā te hapu, nā te tangata whenua e nei wāhi i tākoha ki te kaunihera, e wāhi tāpui mo te hāpori. He wāhi nei whenua tāpui hei aki te hāpori kia tākaro, kia korikori ai te tinana, he wāhi anō hei hiki te wairua. E rua aku a wanga mo te kaupapa nei, tuatahi, kaore koutou i āta kōrero ki te hāpori o ēnei whenua tāpui i te tuatahi, haere tō tika me o ake hiahia. Tuarua, tēnā ka hokona atu ēnei whenua, ka whakapono koutou ki o kupu, ka whakahokia te pūtea ki roto o te toinga o ngā whenua tāpui. Koina tāku, ka waiho au me tēnei whakatauki. Whatu ngaro te tangata, toi tū te whenua. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Mariana. Graham Hall.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I'm losing track of pages.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
some
that.
of those numbers.
Yes, I beg your
Which
pardon.
attachment are we in?
82. Oh, thank you. Yes, we are doing quite a bit of juggling. Thank We would hardly think that, Graham. Kia ora. And kia ora to you as well. Thank you. Your wife. No, mai hara mai. Welcome back to Chambers, Graham. Nice to see you here. Thank you.
I do have a bit of a hearing problem, so that's why Sandy's here.
Thank
and
you.
just make sure if you ask a question.
Yes, thank you. Welcome, Sandy.
Right answer. I wish a mayor, deputy mayor, council and staff. I have to say it's a bit of a, I find it's a bit of an unusual situation sitting on this side of the table. But nonetheless, it's an important one. And it's the first time since 2004 that I've made a presentation, because I think next to the debt we've got here, the salary reserves is probably the biggest issue facing our future. So, Madam Chair, I'm not sure that I'm permitted, but a couple of questions. I did have have a packet of earplugs on the car in case anyone didn't want to listen, but I left them in the car. I thought I don't think everybody would be very attentive. Just a question, Madam Chair. Am I allowed to ask a question? I just wondered how many people had read my submission fully.
Thank you, Graham. I think most of us have. And as you know, what we...
How many councillors have actually read all the submissions?
Actually, I don't allow questions. Thank you. But you'll highlight for us, of course, what you want to take out of your submission if you think there's a need to elaborate on any points.
The Act was changed, and so there was a very large wage given to mayor and councillors so that they could put the time in to do that sort of thing. However, look, what I wanted to say, Madam Chair, quite clearly, a lot of people have made submissions, and I don't impose to cover all the points, but I think some absolutely excellent points have been made by previous speakers, and I trust that they will be taken into account. I raised my submission. I just wanted to say that I think being a councillor or a mayor, it's really important that you, the ratepayers and residents, really request of you rather than what you feel you want to do. Because I know from experience, having stood the fourth term as mayor and having a clear majority of over 12,000 in the fourth term, I think I know what ratepayers require, what they need. I tell you that reason. As stated in my submission, I just wanted to say that I honestly felt that the request by the Minister was audacious, to say the least. To ask us to look at selling reserves for housing for the homeless should have been declined, should never have left the table apart from being received by council and then answered back. To have the matter proceed under the casting vote of the chair, quite frankly, the mayor, I think it's outrageous. The suggestion as the promotion by council and staff to shortcut the sale of the reserves process through government, equally outrageous. There is no doubt in my mind that there are occasions when you've got deadlines for submissions. There are occasions when you have to make sure that you get there, and that's when a casting vote should be used. It should not be used if you can't convince your colleagues it's a good idea. The convention has always been a casting vote is status quo. Not to turn around and change the whole world like been done in this case. I thought it was also pretty worth noting that the Minister of Housing comes from Christchurch. They built over 2,030 houses in the March year, 2,030 houses. But I noticed she didn't ask to sell part of Hagley Park to build them. I wondered if she had, what would have happened. I wanted also to cover the point of that the government have stated that 1/3 of the people in here come from out of town. That's a nonsense. As you see in my submission, it's a nonsense. It's more like 2/3. And if somebody can prove that's wrong, Madam Chair, I'd be really happy to hear it, happy to listen. So clearly we've been dumped on by the government and asked now by the government to see if we can sell some reserves to house them. I just find it really, really strange. And I think the other point about this is that I think as a council you've allowed a appalling situation to develop with them hotels illegally being used, being dumped on, and I have to say, all credit, you are now taking some action. And that action should have been taken 2 years ago, in my opinion, not now. However, you're doing it. The other point I'd like to make, in your publicity, you made it quite clear that we have excess reserves that we are going to set apart. Excess reserves will put there for a really good reason, and that is for future generations and for growth. We don't have excess reserves in Rotorua. I think also, Madam Chair, I think we need to have a reassessment of the number of houses required. We don't have a housing crisis for people who want to buy houses. We have a housing crisis for homeless people. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But to say that we need 6,000 new houses by 2030, when if you have a look at the history of how many houses we've required over the last 20 years. But I realise you've got time constraints, and I am conscious of that. We have been given a time constraint. 5 minutes has been imposed on us. So I'll just end by saying you have choices as council. As councillors, you have choices. You can sell, you can not sell. But the third choice I'd like you to take is to defer any decisions on this issue for the incoming council. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that if you look at what's happening now with the council, even in the last few weeks of your term, and quite frankly, to make a major decision like this is not on. Just put it mildly. Auckland Transport have made a big decision not to go ahead with transport. Really important for them. Leave it for the new council. So as this term of council is rapidly coming to a close, decisions such as the sale of reserves should be set aside for the incoming, newly elected and newly mandated mayor and council.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Incoming council should
Thank you. You've had your time. Thank you very much.
My time up?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I feel insulted, Madam Chair.
Pardon?
I feel insulted to be asked to come along early, and not even my time at 4:08, and you're saying that I can't put my closing remarks.
Thank you, and you've made your points. Thank you very much.
I think to be glad when the election comes on, I can see that.
Thank you. Mr. Pakes? Thank you, Mr. Pakes. Thank you, Mr. Pakes. It's nice to see you here this afternoon.
Thank you. Ooh. Am I online?
Yes, you're definitely
broadcasting.
Yes. Good. Streaming to the millions.
Thank you so much, councillors, for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. I do appreciate it. You have a housing crisis, and for 30 years the council of this city have been too slow to respond to the crisis that they could see coming. You are the council of last resort. You are the council that now must do what you are elected to do, and that is to govern. You are the council that must build low-cost, warm and safe houses for the 30% of your citizens who will not ever be able to afford a greenfield designer-built home. And the only way you are ever going to get those homes built is to give the build to the only organisation that can possibly do the job for you, which is Kāinga Ora. Two words that have come to some misguided people become synonymous with fear, crime, racism, ignorance and more. Kāinga Ora, the Housing Corporation, the organisation that is currently housing some 200,000 citizens in more than 69,000 homes throughout New Zealand. Kāinga Ora, the Housing Corporation, 69,000 homes that the majority of petitions that are appearing before you seem to want to claim are hotbeds of crime and violence. Kāinga Ora, the Housing Corporation, without whom Colin and I could not build our first home. You are here to govern for the benefit of your citizens. You are not here to govern on behalf of citizens who will pontificate with sympathy about the plight of those families who are struggling to have a warm roof over their heads, but then in the same breath demand that the homes they profess to be so badly needed should not be built anywhere near them. NIMBYs, I make no apologies, NIMBYs, are you ready to govern? You need to house some 3,000 families by 2030. They are not homeless people. You've heard that all the time, homeless. They are not homeless people. They are families and pensioners. I listened to two benches address you and claim how they disadvantaged they would be should they decide to build homes on their reserve. They would no longer be able to walk on their reserve. You know that there are 3,000 families in your city who would love to have a home with a piece of grass to walk on, let alone the luxury of a reserve. Who will you govern for, the 2 or the 3,000? You have heard a petitioner state that she currently lives in a safe and stable area. Why should that change just because the Housing Corporation is to build a home near to her? Who will you govern for, those who spread fear or the 3,000? You have an avalanche of old age pensioners who are living with financial stress coming towards you. There are already some 650 of them in your city, 650 pensioners who cannot meet the cost of keeping a roof over their heads, 650 pensioners who are in financial stress because they could only watch with dismay as the property market destroyed their financial security, while those who live in houses next to reserves have seen their wealth skyrocket. 650 pensioners who do not have the luxury of a reserve to call their own. The only luxury a pensioner who is living in a backpacker accommodation has is a long, drafty hallway that leads to one toilet. Those old age pensioners deserve and need community housing. You have to govern. You have to provide warm, low-cost houses for your citizens who so badly need them. But sadly, here's a point. Sadly, I do not think that this council is really committed to building those houses. I watched with dismay when 3 of you did your level best to destroy the special housing subdivision in Ngongataha. I am watching with dismay as 3 of you will use all of the energy that you can muster to prevent the building of much-needed houses on the Springfield Reserve. And to my horror, at a council meeting recently, 5 of you endeavoured to have the words Kāinga Ora, the Housing Corporation, removed from your reserves proposal. Kāinga Ora, Housing Corporation, that you know is the only builder capable of giving this city the houses that it so desperately needs. With no apology, some of you are best described as populist politicians. Some of you govern like a moth to the nearest flame. If you are a councillor whose only wish is to win back your seat at our next elections, then you should vote no to this proposal. But if you choose to be a councillor who has the courage to govern, then you will vote yes. What sort of a councillor do you want to be remembered as? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pikes. Very, very good to have your submission today. Thank you.
Thank you. But just before I go to one last comment, offer an apology for the unnecessary and unwarranted abuse that some petitioners have launched at you people while you've been here doing your work. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Pikes. It hasn't gone unnoticed by councillors, the abuse, if it's in the submissions or verbally, but thank you for mentioning it. Thank you. Councillors, I have to depart at 4 o'clock, and I've asked Deputy Chair, Councillor Kai Fong, to do the last hour. Thank you. And we're just taking a quick break until our next submitter. Thank you.
thought that we might as well finish the afternoon. We've got apologies from Her Worship, who's had to leave now, but we've got two presenters. We've got Adrian on Zoom. So, Adrian, can you hear me? Adrian, if you could just acknowledge if you can hear me. Have you got your microphone on, Adrian?
Oh, sorry, yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we're ready to hear your submission. So you have got 5 minutes. You'll hear a bell at 4 minutes and then another bell at 5 minutes when you'll need to conclude your submission. So, Adrian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Tēnā koutou katoa. I strongly oppose the bypassing of the Reserve Act. By bypassing the Reserve Act, Rotorua Lakes Council are bypassing the need to consult with DOC. Why is Council wanting to avoid this? Why the rush? I oppose the sale of all 10 reserves, and in particular, I strongly oppose the sale of the Lee Road Reserve. I presented a petition of close to 400 residents, ratepayers, and paying visitors to the Henners and Holdens Bay area to the Council earlier this month. I personally went door to door in our area to gather many of these signatures. 3 key points stood out to me while door knocking. 1, a concerning number of people received no notification of the reserve sale, yet I was door knocking within the 400 metre radius set by Council. From what I noted, no renters had been informed, and only some of the owners, in particular, in many cases, only the male spouse had received the letter, not the wife who was also a ratepayer. 2, I only came across one resident in our area who was indifferent. Everyone else I encountered was totally opposed. But sadly, many felt that even if they signed the petition, Council will, quote, do what they like anyhow, and alarmingly, predetermination was alluded to by the vast majority of households I stopped at. 3, a surprising number had no idea how the Council process and submission process worked. I was even asked by a couple of residents, quite surprisingly, what the difference between a submission and a petition is. Is it my job as a neighbour to go around educating others on Council processes so that this can be a fair and democratic process available to all? Is the onus not on the Council to ensure that everyone is well versed and informed of the actual process and their rights? I ask if this is a fair and reasonable consultation given these issues. Under Section 14, Principles relating to local authorities, it states a local authority should take into account the social, economic and cultural well-being of people and communities, and the need to maintain and enhance the quality of the environment and the reasonable, foreseeable needs of future generations. I currently use the Lee Road Reserve as the only safe spot in my area to run on, particularly in the early mornings. I have no spare land for children to play on my section. Existing larger sections will more than likely experience intensification growth and become the size of my section, meaning our reserve will be needed even more so in the future. We use this reserve for ball games and exercise. It's a place to meet up with neighbours and for neighbourhood children to socialise and play. Reserves are a catalyst for bringing communities together. Taking our reserves for housing will be taking a playing space from our neighbourhood tamariki and future offspring. How will putting people in homes on this effectively, in my view, taken land help to uplift the mana of these people? I do wonder. Centralisation of reserves and playing fields disadvantage those of us on tight budgets who cannot always afford the petrol to commute to reserves further away. I'm concerned for the well-patronised All Seasons Holiday Park that is immediately adjacent to the Lee Road Reserve. What will happen to them and tourism Rotorua if one more area, which is a significant tourism base for large groups in particular, if it gains a reputation such as which our inner city has already gained? Where will these visitors go? Many staying out here are choosing to stay out here so they can escape the troubles of inner city streets. Will this be the final nail in the coffin for tourism in Rotorua? I hold the firm view that Lee Road Reserve should remain untouched or be developed in a way that enhances our local and tourism recreation facilities. If Council wants to complain about the flat, regular-shaped Lee Road Reserve costing too much to mow, then goodness, myself and I'm sure many of my neighbours would be more than willing to join a roster of volunteers to mow the reserves ourselves. Compromise is a concept of the past. 21st century thinking calls for people to come together and find a third alternative, a solution where both sides benefit and no side needs to sacrifice. These are two alternatives that exist with Maple Grove land and Haku offerings. We just need to put a little more effort. Once again, I expect Lee Road Reserve to be held in perpetuity as a council-owned asset for many generations to come, not sold off quickly and rushed through Parliament by an outgoing council in the last hour. I implore the council to act as visionary planners, not ambulances. I oppose the sale of the Lee Road Reserve. I absolutely oppose the bypassing of the Reserve Act, and I oppose the rushed nature of this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian, for your submission. We have Mr. Sharp, I think, at the back. If you'd like to come forward to the table.
Yeah, good afternoon. I oppose the proposal to revoke the reserves that the council has
Mr. Sharp,
put
could you
up.
just pull that microphone a bit closer to you, or perhaps sit down so that we can actually hear you?
Okay,
Thank you.
I can hear it. It's ringing in my hearing aids. Okay, I'll start again. I oppose the proposal to revoke the reserves that the council has put up. The one in particular I speak to is the Calder Road Reserve. Some of the reasons you, the council, gave in trying to justify revoking the status of Calder Road were design issues around safety, no road frontage, minimal visibility into the reserve. My thoughts, selling the reserve will not change any of these stated issues. There will be no additional frontage to be gained than there currently is due to the inset nature of the reserve. Established houses are already in place, and the only frontage to the street is to the reserve is a grassed area of 30-metre access way to the park, which cannot be opened up. So the same minimal visibility will remain within the reserve as it is surrounded by the existing home fences that back right round into the reserve. So nothing changes in regards to the raised issues. What will change with you taking the reserve is the removal of a green open area with some playground items and a tennis court, asphalt area, and replaced with a secluded high-density housing project, which will have no more road frontage or visibility than what the reserve has now. A housing project to be managed by Kangaroa, a landlord that has one of the poorest track records of letting to unsuitable tenants, then failing to manage the outcomes. They also show no interest in the well-being of any other established residents in the surrounding area. This just lends itself into creating a subculture environment so different to the established residents and housing around the adjoining park area. In my view, the outcomes would be similar to what Central Rotorua Fenton Street experiences currently are. Reports of vandalism was another item stated, and antisocial behaviour. In my time in Calder Road, this has been minimal and no worse than other areas. The Kohanga has a vested interest in putting forward a worse than is scenario, given it's a commercial or funded operation, which would greatly benefit from the reserve status being revoked and replaced with a social housing complex. I personally have not seen many issues in the reserve in the past 11 years. Ageing playground, nearing the end of its life. The tennis court small playground has not been maintained and has been that way for the past 11 years and some time prior to that, I believe. This is an opportunity for the council to look forward and see what could be made available to suit the area rather than just selling it off. Given that the council has no trouble with visions for looking good and selling projects such as Tudor Towers, Sir Howard Morrison Centre, Town Centre, etc., where the cost seems to be the least consideration, surely putting some effort into updating a small recreational area should not faze a large council team. You are the reason for the ageing playground, and you're using that as a reason to try and take it away from the community. You have just been content to let it go and mow it approximately once every 6 weeks. The equipment in the reserve has not been vandalised, funnily enough, but just deteriorated with age due to no maintenance ever being carried out. And on my last walk through there is no graffiti in that playground either, which is quite strange for Rotorua. There has been some, it's been painted out over a period of time on the fences, but other than that, there's nothing. The other reason given was disposal of reserve would improve passive surveillance, safety and use of reserve. This is a bit of a nonsense. There will be no reserve, just a kohanga. And a cluster of high-density housing tucked away out of sight. Given the outcomes of disturbance, crime and safety that Rotorua and across the country have experienced with similar social housing developments, surely this must be a red flag. And then on top of that, it was done with a split decision, so it just limped over. Surely that's the call to rethink, take your time about it, and make sure that the decision is right. You have a duty of care to Rotorua community areas, but it seems obvious that some community areas are less worthy than others of that care, and you're not prepared to sell you are prepared to sell the reserves out from under them and hope for the best. The proposal deprives me of a green space that I can use to take my grandkids to or just walk through generally and be generally happy there is an easy walk there and a green space available. It doesn't need to be about physically using the reserve. Your well-being is improved by being able to look over the green space close to your residence, or sometimes that's maybe all you'll be able to do in a later age is look over it. I, like a lot of residents, are long-term, settled in Calder Road, and it's filled their needs in terms of safety, welfare and environment for themselves and the family. The area was established with the park, gave a feeling of a community. I was no different, but now have growing anxiety that having the reserve turned into social housing will create issues for the safety and security of myself, family and neighbours. I've had no anxiety prior to that.
Thank you, Mr Sharp, for taking the time. Your time is actually up, but since you are our last presenter of the day, and I saw that you were at the end of your presentation, so can I thank you for taking the time to come in and make that submission today?
I had one paragraph left to go. Can I finish it?
Okay, last paragraph, but please wrap it up.
Not a big ask. Leave the reserve alone for use as it was originally intended for and who it was intended for. I fail to understand how new subdivisions must have allocated green space incorporated, yet here you are taking established communities' green space. Once you enable it to occur, there is no going back. You're rolling the dice to shift some of the social disorder issues and stigma that has been created in and around central Rotorua out to the suburbs in the hope that it goes away or isn't as visible.
Thank you, Mr Sharp. I think you've had your time in a
I
little bit more.
appreciate the extra time. Thank you.
I'd like to thank councillors and community board members. That will bring the hearings to a close today, and we'll adjourn now till 9:30 a.m. on Monday. Thank you to the members of the public that have come along to listen to the submissions this afternoon, and to Felix, but that will be all for today in terms of the hearings. Thank you.